House will come back to order. This House will come back to order. Mr. Clerk, why don't you ring the bell? House will be at order. We're going back to the rules calendar. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 365.
Senate Bill 365 by Senator Ligon of the 3rd, Kennedy the 18th, Cowser to the 46th, Gooch of the 51st, Mullis of the 53rd, and others being entitled an act to amend the official code of Georgia annotated so as to revise, modernize, correct errors or omissions in, and reenact the statutory portion of said code as amended in furtherance of the work of the Code Revision Commission. This bill I referred to the Committee on Code Revision. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Clerk, or the chair, recognizes the chair of the House Judiciary Committee, Chairman Willard, to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, as you recall, every year you've been here, there is a bill that comes before you that's called the Code Reviser Bill. This is the bill now as Senate Bill 365. What the Reviser Bill does, it doesn't change anything as far as actual law of Georgia. It is to correct either punctuation errors, maybe a spelling error, or sometimes the way a code section may be outlined to make it correctly speak what is to be the format of that particular section of the law. You have it go through every code section, title we'll call them, of the code from Title 1 up through Title 53. But every one of these things, if you look through the bill, you'll see that the only thing being changed is something dealing with either a misstatement of a code section number or punctuation or outlining. With that, Mr. Speaker, if there are no questions, I will yield the will and ask for your favorable support to Senate Bill 365.
Gentleman has yielded the will. There are no questions. There is an amendment that is on your desk. It is Amendment AM 44007-2ER. For what purpose does Chairman Willard rise?
Mr. Speaker, I would inquire of the chair as to the constitutionality of having amendment made to what we refer to as the corrector bill. I think there's case law that says that the bill itself is not a bill that can be amended.
Well, the chair has reviewed the case law over the lunch break, and including a case as recent as 2008, and it is the determination of the chair that the amendment is unconstitutional and therefore out of order and will not be allowed. What purpose does Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered on Senate Bill 365? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 365 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of Senate Bill 365, the ayes are 154, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Chair recognizes Chair recognizes the chair of the Appropriations Committee for a motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move that this House insist on its position on House Bill 684 and that a committee of conference be appointed.
Chairman England has moved that the House insist on its position on House Bill 684 and that a committee of conference be appointed. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 684 by Representatives Ralston of the 7th, Jones the 47th, Burns the 159th, and others to be entitled an act to make and provide appropriations for the state fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2018 and ending June 30th, 2019.
Chair recognizes Chairman England to explain his motion.
Ladies and gentlemen, this just gets us in the posture to negotiate the differences between the House and the Senate versions of the FY19 budget, and would appreciate your favorable consideration.
Chairman England has moved that the House insist on its position on House Bill 684 and that a committee of conference be appointed. Is there objection? Is there objection? The chair hears none. The chair hears none, and this House has insisted and a committee of conference will be appointed. The chair appoints as committee of conference Chairman England of the 116th District, Leader Burns from the 159th District, and Speaker Pro Tem Jones from the 47th District. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 194.
Senate Bill 194 by Senator Stone of the 23rd, Albers of the 56th, Tillery the 19th, Harvard of the 16th. Be titled an act to amend Chapter 4, Title 18 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to garnishments proceedings so as to change the maximum part of disposable income subject to garnishment and conform the form used therewith. This bill having referred to the Committee on Judiciary, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Fleming to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 194 is a cleanup bill for the garnishment rewrite that was done by the legislature a session or two ago. It contains no substantive changes to our garnishment code, simply corrects dates, corrects some numbers that were not correct in the rewrite that occurred a couple of sessions ago. Mr. Speaker, I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody may have regarding the
You
legislation.
have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 194 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage of Senate Bill 194. The ayes are 154, the nays are 2. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Resolution 1473.
House Resolution 1473 by Representative McCall of the 33rd and others, creating the House Study Committee on Industrial Hemp Production. This resolution having been referred to the Committee on Agriculture and Consumer Affairs, that committee recommends that this resolution be adopted.
Chair recognizes Chairman McCall to present the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the House. House Resolution 1473 is kind of a way to see whether industrial hemp will work as an agricultural crop in Georgia. The biggest thing that this study committee and I standing here now need to get through the fact that this is not marijuana. This is industrial hemp. I just want to make sure everybody understands that. I started to say something about a cash crop for farmers, but then I figured I would have got too much questions about that too. There's about 27 other states that have legislation providing for the cultivation of industrial hemp, and we just want to see how it'll work for Georgia farmers. There's thousands of products that are made from industrial hemp, all the way from textiles to food, construction material to something called hempcrete that works just about as good as concrete. And there's personal care products that you can buy in a TJ Maxx today that, thank you, Lita Burns, that are, that are made out of hemp. The good thing for farmers is that this plant will build your soil. We plant a lot of cover crops in Georgia to help build the soil, but we have to plow them under to get any benefit out of the soil building ability of those plants that we plant. This particular crop will build soil nutrients and all the same time you can harvest a cash crop off of it. And why are you building your soil? The good thing that I like about it is is that I have heard that there are studies going on. The worst problem that ag has in this state is feral hogs. I understand that there's studies going on now to use industrial hemp as a trap crop, which means you plant it around the edge of the field, and it keeps the feral hogs out of your corn or your soybeans or whatever you want to do. So there's studies going on, serious studies, about using industrial hemp to help control feral hogs. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm scared to ask if there's any questions. So I would really just like everybody to vote for it where we can study it, and I'll yield a well, please, sir.
I thought I understood it till you got in the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this resolution now be adopted? All those in favor of the adoption of House Resolution 1473 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the adoption of the resolution. The ayes are 152. The nays are 1. This resolution, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 422.
Senate Bill 422 by Senator Underman of the 45th, Walker the 20th, and Orrock of the 36th be titled an act to amend Chapter 22 of Title 31 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to clinical laboratories so as to provide for changes for provisions exempting pharmacists from provisions of said chapter when performing certain tests. This bill having referred to the Committee on Health and Human Services, that committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Chairman Cooper to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, Senate Bill 422 allows pharmacists to assist clients that come into a pharmacy with how to use a certain kind of test that you can buy over the counter. They can already do tests to help you when they stick your finger and get capillary blood, but we now have tests for telling whether you're on drugs, genetic tests to see what your ancestors are like, and sometimes people just need a little extra help in understanding how to swab out the inner part of their cheek or other instructions. And all this allows the pharmacist to do is to help with those tests that are FDA approved for over-the-counter to patients. If there are no questions, Mr. Speaker, I will yield the well.
You have no questions. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 422 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of Senate Bill 422, the ayes are 158, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Resolution 537.
Senate Resolution 537 by Senator Beach of the 21st, Schaefer of the 48th, Cowser of the 46th, Gooch of the 51st, Kennedy of the 18th, and others, providing for the closure of certain state property to unauthorized vehicular traffic. This resolution having been referred to the Committee on Transportation, that committee recommends that this resolution be adopted.
Chair recognizes Chairman Hatchett to present the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, I bring before you Senate Resolution 537, which is the closing of Mitchell Street. In 2005, Homeland Security recommended 39 safety changes should be implemented on or around Capitol Square. We've implemented 36 of those 39. The final 3 involve portions of Mitchell Street. As some of you may know or may not know, before the street was closed temporarily this year, we had a young man that actually got out at the crossing and waved his gun, jumped back in his car, went all the way back around the block, and he was coming back. We don't know why he was coming back, but he was stopped before he got here. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a safety issue. We've been talking about closing Mitchell Street since 1953. And it's true, Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms closed Mitchell Street for the remainder of our session. April 1st, it'll be back open. This resolution is seeking to permanently close Mitchell Street from Washington to Capitol. Y'all all know it's like a hallway for us during session. This is the conceptual drawing of what it could look like. Then you have the drawing that involves the roadway that will be begun once we leave next 2 weeks from now. The road that comes around where the old parking deck is, you'll come in on the east side of Mitchell Street and you can turn left, and then we can turn in the parking deck, or other employees here can turn in the parking deck. You'll still have access by emergency vehicles. This is kind of an overhead shot. Look at how it's going to look, the road. Part of the study committee that I was involved in this summer was a modernization of the Capitol. This was the biggest issue we talked about. All sides were talking about closing of Mitchell Street and the safety. It doesn't make sense to close the street for just 3 months during session and cause disruption for just 3 months. With these enhancements and getting accustomed to the new route, it'll make things much smoother next year. You also have every branch of our government right now is open and accessible by these roads and for anything that could happen. And if something did, it could wipe out every branch of our government. Law enforcement is asking for us to support this resolution and to urge our Atlanta City Council and Atlanta Mayor to permanently close this portion. Mr. Speaker, I'll yield for questions, and if I don't have any, I will ask for your favorable consideration.
You have some questions if you care to yield.
I will yield for a couple.
Chair recognizes Chairman Tom Taylor to your right for a question.
Chairman Yield.
Yes.
So we're here roughly 3 or 4 months a year on a good day, but the rest of the branches and the permanent employees are here every day. Is it not true, sir, that in Nice, France, and New York, we've had vehicle-borne attacks that are very difficult to stop, even with gunfire or police in the way, but concrete barriers, actual bollards and stuff like that would be helpful.
You're very correct, and that's all. This is totally about safety.
Thanks, sir.
Do you yield for further questions?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Cannon to your left for a question.
Mr. Chair, do you yield?
Yes.
Is it not true that this portion of the Mitchell Street is currently an access point to District 58?
I'm sure the lady knows that when she speaks.
Do you further yield?
Yes.
And is it not true that this terror case cited in the bill has nothing to do with the state of Georgia?
I think all safety that's across this world has something to do with us.
Do you further yield?
One more.
Do you know which agency of Homeland Security completed this report, federal or state?
I do not, but I would think it's federal.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Mr. Speaker, I'll ask for your favorable consideration and yield the will.
Gentleman has yielded the will. There are other members that wish to be heard on the resolution. The chair recognizes Representative Gardner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the City of Atlanta, I would urge you to reconsider this permanent closing of a City of Atlanta street. In our discussion on the Transportation Committee, it was very clear that the intention was to condemn this portion of a City of Atlanta street. This was alarming to me to consider that there had been ongoing discussion with the mayor of the City of Atlanta and the governor. Some issues were being worked out. Actually, the previous plan that you saw was designed in '08. We have not seen a recent plan that guarantees that Grady Hospital's ambulances will be able to access adequately. As you look at this drawing, I urge you to look past the Capitol and the lovely lovely park around, which is a wonderful, and just beyond that you see Atlanta City Hall, you see the Fulton County Courthouse, you see the Fulton County Administrative Buildings, and to the right you see the beginning of Georgia State University. So during the other 9 months of the year, there are a lot of other people who use this area on a regular basis, demand, in fact, are entitled to the same kind of security that we are entitled to. So the agreement between the governor and the mayor of the City of Atlanta was to close the street and see what could be discussed after April 1st. So I rise in opposition to this resolution, which has the force of law, I am told, and will allow the building authority to condemn City of Atlanta Street. And rather than work in a collaborative way with the city, we'll simply say, if we want to take it, we can. So again, I urge you to vote no. I believe that the ongoing discussions could produce results that would be beneficial to all of us, for those of us who were here 3 months of the year, and to the many, many people who flock downtown for the rest of the year. So consider whether there is an area in your city owned by the state of Georgia, and consider whether condemnation proceedings could happen there. Obviously, I believe this needs to be worked out collaboratively with the City of Atlanta, and I urge you to delay this vote until we can see what can be resolved. Thank you.
The lady has yielded the will. Chair recognizes Representative Al Williams to speak to the resolution. You understand this is Mitchell Street here and not in Hinesville, right?
I sure do, Mr. Speaker, and thank you. I was thinking, walking up, what in the world is a gentleman from Dublin and a gentleman from Midway got doing debating a street in Atlanta, Georgia? But whatever, I want you to know that I like the plan. It's a beautiful plan. I don't oppose the plan, I oppose the process. I feel, from a safety standpoint, that it makes good sense to consider safety, and from what I've heard in testimony, I think Representative Hitchens did one of the first studies back in 2005 and made some recommendations. It takes, the wheels of government roll slow. Sometimes it doesn't roll at all, but I think from a safety standpoint, there should not be a street with that much access next to state capitol, the legislative office building, as a matter of fact, not that close to City Hall. But I do say, in negotiations with the mayor and city council, we just entertained the mayor and talked about the good relations between Atlanta and the State House. Why in the world would we cut off negotiations and go into condemnation and call that good relations? The process can work, and it should be allowed to work, because this does affect the city of Atlanta. And for no other reason than courtesy and congeniality, give the mayor and city council an opportunity to continue these discussions and come in with a good feeling. Now, I worry about, Mr. Speaker, Butler Avenue in Midway. It's a fine little avenue, runs by my IGA. And I don't know what I'd do if they cut it off and I didn't have a thoroughfare. But what I'm trying to tell you is Mitchell Street is just as important from a process, procedural standpoint for the city of Atlanta as Butler Street is to me in Midway, Georgia. There has got to be some respect for the process, and I still believe, although it gets shady at times, I believe in home rule, that you should, those that live and pay the taxes in a city, and those that must govern in a city should be respected in what they want. I don't believe in dabbling. And I remember when I came on a staff here in 1975 for the now departed Zell Miller, that was an unbreakable rule. It was called home rule. You didn't break the rule. You negotiated. But I also remember, as a youngster in politics in Georgia, when if you wanted to win, you ran against the city of Atlanta. The more you said negative about Atlanta, the better you did out in the hinterlands. What we didn't understand was, in spite of some of our best efforts, we lead the South in Fortune 500 companies. What would have happened if the folk who condemned this great center of transportation and commerce had prevailed? What would have happened if a speaker from Bremen, Georgia had not spoken up for MARTA? But he did it because the people who lived in the city of Atlanta asked him to do it, and he was an unlikely supporter of MARTA. The process is what I don't like. I love the plan. It's beautiful. I have enjoyed crossing that street and not looking to see if I had to run for my life. It's been good. And all I could think about doing the run is, I wonder what Libby gonna do with this insurance money. But the process, let the process work. The negotiations, let the input be heard. It's not gonna change just over 2 or 3 months to do this. Let's do it. Love the plan, hate the process. The word condemnation creates anger. Let's don't go that route. With that, Mr. Speaker, I'll shortly, in a few days, go back to the humble streets of Midway on Butler Avenue.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this resolution now be adopted? All those in favor of the adoption of the resolution will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. What purpose does the Speaker Pro Tem rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Isn't it true, Mr. Speaker, that this process has been ongoing since soon after Governor Perdue was put in place? And I saw a map such as this. It's been ongoing through now two mayors in Atlanta. And just as cities exercise condemnation, sometimes the state needs to exercise its powers to further state goals.
If the lady so states, I think the process began in 2005, as I recall. What purpose does Representative Oliver rise?
Parliamentary inquiry,
State
Mr.
your
Speaker.
inquiry.
Isn't it true, sir, that if we're using the word condemnation and we're using the analysis of one state government entity condemning property of another city government, that we are traipsing across some constitutional lines here that are highly problematical?
Well, I know the lady to be a very distinguished attorney, and I know she believes that, which she has stated. I'm not going to offer up an opinion on that, though. What purpose does the Majority Caucus whip rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, it's not true that we've been hearing a discussion about ongoing negotiations between state government and city government. Isn't that correct, Mr. Speaker?
I've heard that discussed today.
And I'm curious, Mr. Speaker, as a member of this body, what are they negotiating over? Is it a price? And if so, what is the price that the city of Atlanta wants for this property that we really need for the safety of this body? I'm just curious to know what that price is, Mr. Speaker.
If I knew, I wouldn't tell you. All right, we're going to finish voting here. Take one or two more. What purpose does Representative Henson rise?
Parliamentary
State your inquiry.
Isn't it true that the Capitol has always been difficult to access for handicapped individuals? And isn't it true that my great concern is what are we going to be doing in this? It's not been addressed by the author, in order to make it easier for handicapped individuals to access the Capitol. And further, with regard, another inquiry is, how are people going to bring us our lunch? A very important consideration. And lastly, how close will the access be for Uber or other vehicles they'll be picking and dropping people off?
Did you say something about we wouldn't get lunch?
Well, Mr. Speaker,
Might want to send this back to committee then.
that's what I was recommending. Thank you.
All right. We're going to have one more parliamentary inquiry, and that's from the author of the bill, and then we're going to finish voting. What purpose does Chairman Hatchett rise?
Parliamentary
State
inquiry.
your inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, isn't it true that I will never miss lunch?
Well, there you go.
Further parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, isn't it true that this is a resolution that allows the governor to show support of his legislature, and also that condemnation is never mentioned in this resolution?
If the gentleman so states. Those in favor of the resolution are voting green. Those opposed are voting red. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the adoption of Senate Resolution 537, the ayes are 106, the nays are 59. This resolution, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed, adopted. Clerk will read the caption to House Resolution 913.
House Resolution 913 by Representative Rakestraw, the 19th, and others, creating the House Study Committee on Incorporating Law Enforcement into the Pathway to Treatment and Social Services.
Just a minute, Mr. Clerk. We are still taking up legislation. This House will be in order. Clerk may proceed.
Creating the House Study Committee on Incorporating Law Enforcement in the Pathway to Treatment and Social Services for persons having challenges with drug use and mental health. This resolution having been referred to the Committee on Public Safety and Homeland Security. That committee recommends that this resolution be adopted by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Rakestraw to present the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House colleagues, this is a H.R. 913, and it's a study committee to look at the relatively new and emerging area of law enforcement for pre-arrest diversion programs to help people with mental health and addiction issues get into treatment. There's 5 different pathways that have been utilized in various areas of the country to look at better ways to build pathways to treatment and give police another tool in their toolkit to start helping people that need treatment and break down barriers to treatment. Georgia has been a leader in criminal justice reform, and when I saw this program, I thought we needed to study how we can be a proactive leader in getting in front of these emerging issues of policy to create better outcomes for those in our society that are struggling to cope with life and are turning to drugs and self-medicating and have gone untreated before their life goes down a really bad path that doesn't only cost them, it costs us all. So I would like to study this issue, and I would appreciate your favorable vote on this issue. And if there are no questions, Mr. Speaker, I'll yield the well.
You have a question if you care to yield.
I'll yield.
Chair recognizes Representative Stovall to your left for a question.
Does the lady yield?
Yes, I do.
With this resolution and with the study committee, if there was a person with a disability, intellectual disability, will you all also be studying to make sure that if they're pulled over by law enforcement, that they are trained on how to handle those individuals that might not physically have a disability but intellectually may have one?
I don't believe that's a part of the scope of what these pre-arrest diversion programs have been looking at, but you know, I'm not opposed to, you know, considering that when we look at these issues.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I'll yield the well.
The lady has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. There is a floor amendment offered by Representative Rakestraw. It is LC 41155-7S. Is there any objection, first of all, to withdrawing the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is withdrawn. Is there any objection to adopting the floor substitute offered by the lady from the 19th District, Representative Rakestraw? The chair hears none. The floor substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this resolution now be adopted? All those in favor of the adoption of House Resolution 913 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the adoption of House Resolution 913. The ayes are 158, the nays are 2. This resolution, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Clerk will read the caption to House Resolution 1398.
House Resolution 1398 by Representative Dollar of the 45th, creating the House Study Committee on Short-Term Rental Providers. This resolution has been referred to the Committee on Regulated Industries. That committee recommends this resolution be adopted.
Chair recognizes Chairman Dollar to present the resolution.
Thank you, Speaker. H.R. 1398 simply creates a study committee looking at the short-term rental industry. Be thinking the VRBO, Airbnb, HomeAway, those type of companies and activities. A few years ago, this House had a study committee looking at the industry, and the findings of the committee were essentially that the industry was a bit young and needed to mature a bit before we looked at it and took action. Many feel that that time has come with this. This industry has grown exponentially since that time and is projected to grow again exponentially. So that's what we will be looking at. If there are no questions, I will yield, Speaker.
You have a question if you care to yield.
I'll yield for one.
Chair recognizes Representative Spencer to your right for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
Yes.
Are we contemplating any fees on these services in this study committee? I mean, are we looking at that? Trying to treat them like hotels? And
that's certainly not the intention to tack on additional fees onto this. I can speak to that, but as far as what right now these groups and these companies are supposed to be paying taxes, we're capturing very little of that. So I imagine that component will be looked at. But as far as additional fees, I wouldn't want to speak to any findings of the committee, but that's certainly not the intention.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Speaker.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this resolution now be adopted? All those in favor of the adoption of House Resolution 1398 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. He comes up here early every day. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the adoption of House Resolution 1398. The ayes are 142, the nays are 16. This resolution, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 8.
Senate Bill 8 by Senator Unum of the 45th, Kirk of the 13th, Parent of the 42nd, Butler of the 55th, and Orrock of the 36th. A bill entitled to be entitled an act to amend Title 33 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to insurance so as to provide for consumer protections regarding health insurance. This bill having referred to the Committee on Insurance, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Smith to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, the last 48 hours, there's been an awful lot of discussion about this bill. Same bill that was presented to y'all on February the 12th, I think, and there was no discussion at that time. Matter of fact, on February the 12th, this House voted 164 to 1 to pass this particular piece of legislation. And just so everyone's clear, Senate Bill 8 is the exact same language as House Bill 678. I stripped Senate Bill 8 and added House Bill 678. Now what you have to understand, because of Senate Bill 8, for the first time, consumers will be made aware of their entire care team and potential costs associated with health care. And for too long, health care prices have been in a black hole, and these meaningful transparency provisions will make Georgians a savvy shopper to choose the right revenue. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what this bill is. That's what it does. So I ask your favorable consideration for Senate Bill 8. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
You have no questions.
Thanks, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Newton to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and colleagues. I first want to start with the great respect and the appreciation I've had to be able to work with Chairman Smith as we tackle this challenging issue for recruiting doctors to Georgia, but even more challenging for patients who are faced with out-of-network and surprise bills that we've all heard about. I am excited about the portion of this bill that deals with transparency. That is something that I believe is crucial in establishing that elective procedures, people need to know what they're getting into. And that's what Senate Bill 8 does. What we have before us, though, is a solution that only solves about 5% of the problems for Georgians. It solves the small amount not for emergencies, for ER visits, for trauma, for emergency surgery, but it only solves it for elective problems. It's an important step, and that's why the language was copied in what's now House Bill 314 that's being debated right now in the Senate that will be coming over here. It's passed twice from the Senate already, 52 to nothing. That's a solution that does the transparency piece, which was preserved from Chairman Smith's bill. That takes care of the 5%, but in addition, it takes care of the other 95%, which is emergency out-of-network surgery. What we have now, first off, most physicians and most physicians groups want to be in network, and they are. They're in network with almost every plan, Blue Cross, Aetna, United, all of them, and even 30 or 40 sub-plans beneath that. It's something that physicians want to be because that's the way they get referrals, from elective referrals from other offices. What you run into, though, with a plan that's narrower, that may not have all the specialties you need, when you go in with an emergency, you may have been paying thousands of dollars a month. You may have been paying tens of thousands between you and your employer for what you thought was good coverage, only to find out that the specialty that you or your family member or your child needs, it doesn't have an in-network provider, and then you're left to pay for the services yourself. We've been working on this for 2 years. We had a study committee for the past year that looked at it carefully. We've been trying to find an answer to the entire problem of out-of-network billing. And I know our healthcare has used up a lot of oxygen in this room. we now have an opportunity coming this Tuesday. While I'm going to reluctantly oppose this Senate Bill 8, we do have an opportunity coming up this next Tuesday when the Senate Bill, House Bill 314, comes back over for not a 5% solution, but a 99% solution. So if anybody who's tired of hearing about surprise bills, about medical bankruptcies, about out-of-network, in-network, everything else, we have a chance this coming Tuesday to solve that, but not just solve it for us who are tired of talking about it, but we can solve it because there won't be those things going on in Georgia if we take the comprehensive solution that's been agreed on by a broad range of groups. And let me just list a couple of them. The Georgians for a Healthy Future, Georgia Retired Educators, the Teachers Group Tragic, the Epilepsy Foundation, the National Patient Advocate Foundations, all strong consumer protection groups. But in addition, you've also got Georgia Watch. Then in addition, you've got the American College of Surgeons, the American College of Physicians, Georgia Orthopedic Society, the people that you want on call in an emergency room when it's something I can't handle or one of my counterparts in emergency medicine can't handle. Those will be the people that will be on call for you and your family member. We've got that broad coalition supporting a comprehensive solution. So I'm going to reluctantly not support the 5% solution today because we have an opportunity with slightly different language that would get confusing if we pass two bills that deal with transparency and the other. I mentioned earlier to someone that we tell our kids, just do your best. We don't care about your grades. We just want to know that you did your best. What we have is an opportunity right now to either do a 5% or a 99% solution. I think if we do our best, we're going to pick the 99% solution. So I'd urge you to pause button on Senate Bill 8. We can always pull it back up for reconsideration if 314 gets messed up, but hit the pause button by voting no on Senate Bill 8 and considering supporting House Bill 314 when it comes Tuesday. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I'll yield the well. I appreciate it.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any? We have the chairman's time. Chair recognizes Chairman Smith for the chairman's portion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, they always talk about in politics to follow the money. Let's follow the money a little bit. I know there's a group that's wanting to kill Senate Bill 8 so they can pass House Bill 314. And let's take a look at the money trail. If they'll put that document on the screen. For those of you who don't know, a CPT code is what a doctor assigns to a particular procedure that he does. The code is assigned, so when a procedure is done, it has a CPT code. And if you'll look at the first item there, Medicare, if you're a doctor and accept Medicare on this particular CPT code, you agree to accept $59.33. Now, the average contracted rate, $211. Now that's what the insurance companies and the doctors are agreeing to. That's what they accept. Look at that far right. That's what that new bill that they're talking about wants doctors to receive. $481. That's twice of what they're currently agreeing to accept. Let's take a look at the next one. Medicare, $3,000 for that particular CPT code. Average contracted rate, they're accepting $3,100. 80% of Fair Health, what they're asking you to vote for, is $11,600. Now, there's a couple of other issues with this particular bill. And I'm not an attorney, but if you read the Georgia Constitution, that Fair Health is an outside organization in New York. And the Georgia Constitution says, power vested in the General Assembly. The legislative power of the state shall be vested in the General Assembly, not in some organization stationed outside of this state. I've also asked for a physical note. What is this going to be as far as the impact on the state health benefit plan? Haven't received that. Now, a couple of other issues. And every one of you need to be thinking about these other issues. If we increase the provider's compensation at the rate that you're looking at on those charts, guess whose premiums are going to go up? Mine, yours, and your constituents. Now, if we do this for emergency room providers, come next session, every other doctor organization in the state will be at your door asking for the same compensation rate. And I mentioned about following the money. Last year when this bill first got started in the Senate, it was started at 60% of fair health instead of the 80%. And we had some individuals, I won't say what profession they were, but we had some individuals in the Senate who jumped it up to 80%. Now there's a big difference between 60 and 80%. Folks, health care is a serious problem, but the real problem with health care is the price of health care. I don't know if y'all noticed in the paper this last week, or this week, matter of fact, there was a lady in Florida who went outside and got stung by a bee. Now, this lady had allergic conditions to that previously, but she didn't have an EpiPen with her, so she went to the emergency room. Well, for a bee sting, and they emphasize this, for a bee sting, she had several doctors look at that bee sting. She had a blood test, she had an EKG, and all this lasted less than 2 hours. Anybody want to guess what the cost was? How about $12,000? Now, I was talking to somebody, and I said, well, you know, for several doctors to look at a bee sting, she really must have been a pretty woman. Now, I want to emphasize to you that Senate Bill 8 is the identical bill you and I voted on February the 12th, the exact same bill. Nothing has changed. The only change is we've had an organization that sent out a mass email to folks around the state, to some of your constituents, telling you how bad this was so that they could get that 80% of fair health. That's what's the difference. Now, remember, when I made my opening statement, I said that healthcare cost has been and is a black hole. You cannot see the bottom of this hole. You're unsure where it ends. Now, until we can, through transparency, create this savvy healthcare shopper, you and I will continue to be abused, and our constituents will continue to be abused with surprise bill. I encourage you to vote for Senate Bill 8, and with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield the well.
Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 8, will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? Have all members now voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of Senate Bill 8, the ayes are 92, the nays are 63. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Chair recognizes Chairman Tanner for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that this House disagree with the Senate substitute to House Bill 930.
Chairman Tanner has moved that the House disagree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 930. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 930 by Representative Tanner, the 9th Smyrie, the 135th Coomer, the 14th, and others to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 80, Title 36, Title 48, Chapter 32 of Title 50 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to provisions applicable to counties, municipal corporations, and other governmental entities.
Chair recognizes Chairman Tanner to explain his motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the transit bill that we've worked on for the past year or so in the Transit Governance and Funding Commission. The Senate made some significant changes to it, and I would just like to ask this House to disagree so that we can move closer to getting into conference committee, working out of our differences, and getting this issue voted on next week. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
There are no questions. On the gentleman's motion that the House disagree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 930, is there any objection? Is there objection? The chair hears none, and the House has disagreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 930. Chair recognizes Chairman England for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just want to let everyone know that the House and Senate conferees on the appropriations bill will be meeting in room 403 at 3:30. Thank you.
House will be at order. This House will be at order. Chair recognizes for a morning order the chairman of the Judiciary Non-Civil Committee, Chairman Golick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House. I appreciate the Speaker's opportunity for me to take a few minutes of your time to simply say the words thank you. To simply say thank you for your friendship, for your collegiality, for your collaboration, for the relationships that I have built over the last 2 decades in this House, believe it or not. Every time I say that, two decades, 20 years, I can't believe it. And then I take a look at my campaign flyer from 20 years ago and realize that I looked like I was 12 years old at the time. in comparison. And I look at the picture and I say to myself, man, I just don't know if I would have voted for me, given the youthful appearance at the time. But I will not take a long time. I know this is the end of the day. I wanted to say 3 specific thank yous. There are many more thank yous that I want to go ahead and say. I won't do them here. I think they're best left personally. I think that's the way to go about that. That's just the way I go about it. But there were 3 general thank yous, but important thank yous I wanted to go ahead and make. And the first, of course, was to the people of the greater Smyrna Vinings metropolitan area in Cobb County for the faith that they put in me 2 decades ago, and have renewed my contract every 2 years 10 times. I appreciate their faith in me, their trust, and I can't say enough about that community, as I know that we all can't say enough about our own respective communities and where we come from, how it molds us, how it gives us direction, and how they give us strength. The second larger thank you that I want to make is, of course, to the presiding officer of this body, the Speaker of the House, and to thank him for the faith that he has placed in me over the last decade or more in chairing the committee that he chaired not terribly long ago. It has been very challenging. It has challenged me in ways that I never thought I would be challenged when I came into the House, in terms of the subject matter, the seriousness of the subject matter, and it has given me the opportunity to work with some tremendously talented people on both sides of the aisle in my time as chair. My hope and my prayer is that the work that we have done, both Democrats and Republicans alike, on that committee has made this state safer. That's my hope. That's my prayer. I think history will ultimately determine that. But when we put our noses to the grindstone in judiciary non-civil, we always keep our eyes on the ball. We always remember, again, on a bipartisan basis, nearly always, what is the goal? The goal is to go ahead and preserve public safety, because that's one of our main charges in this body. And I want to thank the members of that committee for their friendship, for their professionalism, and for their collaboration over the years. But I wouldn't have that opportunity if it weren't for Speaker David Ralston giving me that opportunity, that privilege to serve in that capacity. And I thank you, Speaker Ralston, for that. The third thank you I wanted to make on a larger basis is to former Governor Perdue. I was in my third term, or maybe the end of my second term, when Governor Perdue drafted me into his ranks as a floor leader. And that was when we were in the minority party. And that was a tremendous experience, being in the minority, and I'll get to that in a moment. But at the time, I didn't realize it, but my experience, looking back on it now, my experience as Governor Perdue's floor leader made me an effective legislator. And the reason I'm saying that is, back in 2005, when the majority shifted in this body, Governor Perdue loaded me up like a pack mule in terms of carrying legislation. But I was so young at the time, I didn't realize that I was being loaded up like a pack mule. I'm looking at Representative Efstration right now, and he knows exactly what I'm talking about. I'm looking at Representative Coomer, he knows exactly what I'm talking about. And for other people in the body who have been floor leaders, they know exactly what I'm talking about. But there would be in years past, if you're carrying one or two major bills, that's a significant load. And I remember one year where I was in that office and I was loaded up with 3. And my reaction after I was told, we'd like you to carry this, this, and this, and they were major pieces, 2 on criminal justice and 1 on ethics, I just said, not knowing any better, okay, no problem. And I realized soon after how difficult that role really was. But in doing that, it forced me to become a better legislator. It forced me to learn the process quicker, and as a result, I hope to be more effective, not just in the role as administration floor leader at the time, but also as a legislator here in this body, no matter what the time, no matter what the year or the role. As I said earlier, that I'm going to make a lot of personal thank yous on a personal, individual basis, because at the end of the day, this is a people business. Relationships matter. The way you're dealt with in this body, the way that people treat you, especially younger in your career or more junior in your career, can have a great effect on how you treat others in this body later on in your career as you become more senior. And I'm going to give you an example of that. It was in 1999, it was my first session, and I had a bill having to do with volunteers in medicine. Volunteers in medicine, it was the first bill of its kind that allowed retired physicians to volunteer their services, waive certain requirements as a way to serve medically underserved communities. And I was having a very tough time with the bill, and I was in the minority party at the time. And I was having a tough time with a particular subcommittee chair who was being very difficult. But there was a shakeup in that committee, and the new subcommittee chair, I explained to him what the issue was about, and without really hesitating, he said, "Oh, that's a good issue. We'll go ahead and take it up." And he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to do that. Here I was, this junior Republican in the minority in my very first term, barely shaving. And he looked at me, and he didn't see someone from the other party. He saw what? He listened to the issue. He made a determination based on the issue. And that's what set the issue forward for me. And eventually it passed in my first term. But it would not have happened had that member not concentrated more on the issue as opposed to what party I was in or what my lack of seniority in the body. Fast forward 14, 15 years. Representative Scott Holcomb had a bill a few years ago which was known then and now as the rape kit bill. There are a lot of people here who remember that issue. GBI partnered with Representative Holcomb to advance this bill. There was a backlog in terms of the analysis on rape kits. It seemed like a very routine matter to me. And we put it through the Judiciary Non-Civil Committee without any problem. Lo and behold, the issue bogged down on the other side for whatever reason. And Representative Holcomb was having a very difficult time. I mean, very difficult. It came to the point where I think it was around day 38 or day 39. And I remember Representative Holcomb coming up to me. And at the time, sometimes in late March around here, it's really warm, and sometimes it's really not. Well, this year it's really not, but that year was really warm. And he was overheated. He had that look, and we've all been here. We've all been there. He had that look of a legislator who was just looking in any direction for any avenue that he could find to pass his bill, which was an important bill. And I remember he came up to me and asked me to execute a maneuver, which we've all done here in terms of taking a bill out of committee, stripping it out, putting new language in, and sending it back, right? We've all done that. Or if you haven't done it, you will. And I looked at him, and I could tell that he was at his wit's end. He'd worked so hard on it. It was an important issue. I didn't think it was any controversial issue at all. I thought it was really more administrative than anything else. Didn't have a clue at the time that it would turn into the issue that it became. But it did. And so my first reaction initially, and I hate to admit this, but it's true, was, I thought to myself, I really don't want to have to call another meeting, strip out this bill, do it in 5 minutes flat. But then after I got over that really poor reaction of my own, I thought of what happened to me in my own experience 14 or 15 years earlier when I went up to a subcommittee chair, a Democratic subcommittee chair, at the time when I was a freshman, and threw myself on his mercy and said, "Can you help?" And what he did at that time is he didn't see the party. He didn't see the junior colleague. He saw the issue. And in that moment that Representative Holcomb asked me for my help, I thought of the individual in 1999 who helped me. That experience back then colored my reaction, and predictably so, on how I dealt with that issue. And by the way, do you know who that representative was in 1999 who helped me with that issue? He's walking through the door right now. It was then Representative and now Representative Vernon Jones who helped me in 1999, and I'll never forget it. It was my first bill, and you never forget your first bill. And the moral of the story, of course, is relationships matter. People matter. It's a people business. But at the end of the day, when we leave this body, whenever you leave this body, I think that if it hasn't struck you already, it will strike you that what really matters at the end of the day are the issues and what you've done to advance those issues as you walk out the door. And I hope that'll stick with you to some degree over the course of time. I'm glad I made that decision at that time, just as I'm glad Representative Jones made the decision that he made for me in 1999. And I hope there are those that will benefit by that story in the future. I thank you for your friendship, I thank you for your time, and I yield the well.
The clerk will read the caption to a privileged resolution.
House Resolution 1683 by Representative Ralston of the 7th, Smiley of the 135th, Williams of the 168th, Jones of the 47th, Burns of the 159th, Trammell of the 132nd, and others. A resolution honoring and remembering the life of the Honorable Zell Bryan Miller, former governor and United States Senator of this great state, and for other purposes. Whereas the Honorable Zell Bryan Miller was born February 24th, 1932 in Young Harris, Georgia, to Stephen Grady Miller and Bertie Miller, one of North Georgia's most distinguished native sons. And whereas he attended Young Harris College and later earned bachelor's and master's degrees in history from the University of Georgia and entered the teaching profession as a history and political science professor at Young Harris College. And whereas he served his country with honor and distinction in the United States Marine Corps from 1953 to 1956, leaving the Corps as a sergeant and rifle expert. And whereas he began a long and distinguished career in public service in 1959 with a term as mayor of Young Harris and was elected to the Georgia Senate in 1960, won the first of 4 consecutive terms as Georgia's lieutenant governor in 1974, and was elected to the first of 2 terms as governor of Georgia in 1990, and served as United States Senator from Georgia from 2000 till 2004. And whereas he had a passion for education and contributed greatly to the cause of education in Georgia in many ways, most notably through the creation of the highly successful Hope Scholarship Program for students at Georgia's colleges, universities, and technical institutes, and the nation's first statewide voluntary pre-kindergarten for all 4-year-olds whose parents wanted to enroll them. And whereas upon retiring from the United States Senate in 2004, he returned to the classroom as a professor at the University of Georgia, Emory University, and Young Harris College. And whereas in 2008, the Zell B. Miller Learning Center at the University of Georgia was dedicated in his honor. In 2014, the Zell and Shirley Miller Library at Young Harris College was dedicated in the couple's honor. And in 2016, the Miller Institute was created to preserve, promote, and continue the Miller legacy. And whereas on the morning of March 23, 2018, he died peacefully at his home in Young Harris, surrounded by his beloved wife Shirley and his family. And whereas the state of Georgia mourns the loss of this monumental statesman, distinguished Georgian, and giant of the North Georgia mountains. Now therefore be it resolved by the House of Representatives that the members of this body join together to express their deepest regret at the passing of former Governor and United States Senator Z. Brian Miller, and extend their most sincere condolences to his family.
Chair recognizes Speaker Ralston to speak to the resolution.
Y'all be seated. It didn't seem right for the day to pass by totally without spending a few minutes just talking about this great Georgian. We have very few living governors, living former governors, and now we have one less. And I think it's appropriate that we remember him today. You know, growing up in the mountains of North Georgia, there was almost never a time that Zell Miller was not part of our political life. I can remember, as the clerk read, going to the mailbox and getting mail with what amounted to mail pieces for his state Senate campaigns. Later he ran for Congress, and as he liked to say, he came in second twice. Came here and worked at the Capitol a few years and was elected Lieutenant Governor of Georgia in 1974, served 16 years, took out in 1980 and ran for the U.S. Senate. You know, we like to think we have some tough races these days. How many of you remember that primary? Probably the most bitter, heated, ugly race in the history of the state. And he came in second. In 1990, though, he was elected governor, and he was elected on a vision. He was elected on this son of a school teacher and a school teacher who had married a school teacher. Was elected on a vision that he wanted to lift up education in Georgia. So he developed the vision and plan for the Georgia Lottery and was elected governor on that platform in 1990. Zell Miller had a unique political sense. They tell the story when the race in 1990 got a little tight at one time. He told his pollsters and his consultants, says, throw away those books and y'all go to the Walmart tonight and see what they're talking about. And they did. But he won that race and was reelected in a close race in 1994. So having grown up with this man, When I came to the Capitol in 1993, he was the governor. And he had his own style. I often hear it say that there's bullies down on the second floor. You ought to have known Zell Miller in his heyday, because you've never seen bully like he could practice that art. But he ended up usually getting what he wanted, and it was usually in the direction that he thought was the right way to go. He implemented the Hope Scholarship. He reformed sentencing in criminal cases here in the state, and I believe will be remembered in history as one of our greatest governors ever. I had the great fortune of also calling him my friend. And I remember when my dad passed away almost 8 years ago, the governor and Shirley came to the funeral home, and I was telling him, I said, you know, my dad loved and respected you more than any individual he never voted for in his life. He said, I'd be disappointed if he had voted for me. Because we also shared something else, and that was a tradition of respect. The part of the state that we both came from, Republicans didn't come along with Barry Goldwater or Ronald Reagan. They came along with Abraham Lincoln. And Democrats came along with whoever was the Democratic leader at that time. But we had respect, and we learned to appreciate our differences, and we learned to put aside those differences after the election was over and try to work together. But when the election was going on, you didn't speak, you didn't date the daughter of a Democrat, you didn't help them, you didn't do anything. But when the political season was over, you put all that aside. And I am happy and honored that I shared that with him. We are blessed that he came this way. And he truly transformed Georgia in a positive way. And I am honored to have called him governor. I'm honored to have called him neighbor. And most of all, I'm honored to have called him my friend. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Clerk will read from a group of privileged resolutions.
Recognizing and honoring May 2018 as Asian Pacific American Heritage Month as an important time to celebrate the significant contributions of Asian Americans. Recognizing the 75th anniversary of the repeal of the Chinese Exclusion Act. Recognizing and commending Yo Kong Kim for her service in strengthening the relationship between the state of Georgia and the Republic of South Korea. Recognizing and commending Doug Shule's son for his service in strengthening the relationship between the state of Georgia and the Republic of South Korea. Recognizing and commending Rick Ivey on the occasion of his retirement. Commending the Thomasville High School Bulldogs boys basketball team for winning the 2018 GHSA Class 2A State Basketball Championship. Recognizing and commending the Republican Leadership for Georgia programming. Commending Police Chief Mark Renanew. Commending the leadership of Putnam Class of 2018, and for other purposes. That completes the reading of the privileged resolutions.
Is there any objection to adopting the privileged resolutions? The chair hears none, and the resolutions are adopted.
House will come back to order. House will come back to order. What purpose does the chairman of the Rules Committee rise?
Rise to make a motion.
State your motion.
Motion to have the rules suspended in order to introduce a resolution for the first time and assign to Rules Committee.
Chairman, as long as it's not an announcement, we're fine. Chairman Meadows has moved that the rules of the House be temporarily suspended to allow a bill to be read for the first time and assigned to committee. Is there objection? Is there objection? The chair hears none. It is so ordered. The clerk will read the caption.
A numbered House resolution by Representative Meadows of the 5th and others urging the House Rural Development Council to investigate ways to streamline and make equitable the use of public right-of-ways.
Rules Committee. What purpose does Representative Fleming rise?
To make a motion, Mr. Speaker.
State your motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the rules of this House be temporarily suspended so a bill can be assigned to a committee and read the first time.
Representative Fleming has moved that the rules of the House be temporarily suspended to allow a bill to be read for the first time and assigned to committee. Is there objection? Chair hears none, and it is so ordered. Clerk will read the caption.
Unnumbered House resolution by Representative Fleming of the 121st, creating the Joint Study Committee on the selection of Georgia's future voting system for secure, accessible, and fair elections.
Governmental Affairs. We're going to be in recess just for a moment while we're waiting on some Senate action. I do want to announce to you, you have on your desk the agree, disagree folders. These will be carried over until next week, and we will work from these folders, but please do not leave with them. And then any new propositions that come in will be added or be put into a supplemental folder that the clerk will put together. So you'll have both that folder and the supplemental folder. And those will be back on your desk Tuesday. House will come back to order. The chair recognizes Chairman Tanner for, I'm sorry, start over. The chair recognizes Chairman Jay Powell for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House insist on its position on Senate Bill 402.
Chairman Powell has moved that the House insist on its position on Senate Bill 402. The clerk will read the caption.
Senate Bill 402 by Senator Gucci, the 51st, Cowser to the 46th, Kennedy the 18th, Miller the 49th, Ginn to the 47th, and others, being entitled to enact the Achieving Connectivity Everywhere Act and to amend Titles 32, 36, 48, and 50 of the official code of Georgia annotated.
Chair recognizes Chairman Powell to explain his motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Senate has received Senate Bill 402, which we acted on right before lunch today, and they have disagreed with the position, and so we're asking that we insist on our position.
Chairman Jay Powell has moved that the House insist on its position on Senate Bill 402. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and the House has insisted on its position on Senate Bill 402. If I could have your attention, please. I'm not trying to take up what's left of your Friday afternoon. We're waiting on a couple of procedural moves by the Senate so that we can get conferees appointed on House Bill 930, which is the transit bill, and on Senate Bill 402, which is the broadband bill. We wanted to try to get those conferees appointed this afternoon so they can get to work tonight and over the weekend. Yes, you are. Or I'll find somebody that will. That would be good training, wouldn't it? So hang with us here just a little bit longer, and then we'll try to get you out of here. House will come back to order. House will be in order. Chair recognizes Representative F. Stration for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House disagree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 906.
Representative F. Stration has moved that the House disagree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 906. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 906 by Representative Dempsey of the 13th, Ballinger of the 23rd, Houston of the 170th, and others to be entitled an act to amend Article 4, Chapter 18, entitled 50. The official code of Georgia annotated relating the inspection of public records so as to exclude public disclosure of personal information.
Chair recognizes Representative F. Stration to explain his motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, this is the legislation that was previously passed by this body to exclude the personal information of foster and former foster parents from being openly disclosed to the public. The Senate had some changes, and we're working out the differences right now. Would ask that you support my motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the will.
On the gentleman's motion that the House disagree to the Senate amendment to House Bill 906, is there objection? Is there objection? The chair hears none, and the House has disagreed to the Senate amendment to House Bill 906. Chair recognizes Chairman Tanner for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that this House insist on our position on HB 930 and appoint a conference committee.
Chairman Tanner has moved that the House insist on its position on House Bill 930 and that a committee of conference be appointed. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 930 by Representative Tanner of the 9th, Smyrie, the 135th, Coomer, the 14th, and others be entitled an act to amend Chapter 80 of Title 36, Title 48, and Chapter 32 of Title 50 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to provisions applicable to counties, municipal corporations, and other governmental entities.
Is there objection to the gentleman's motion? The chair hears none, and the House has insisted the chair appoints as a committee of conference Representative Tanner of the 9th, Representative Jones of the 47th, and Representative Smyrie of the 135th. Chair recognizes Chairman Jay Powell for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I make a motion that the House adhere to our position on 402 and appoint a committee on conference.
Chairman Powell has moved that the House adhere to its position on Senate Bill 402 and that a committee of conference be appointed. The clerk will read the caption.
Senate Bill 402 by Senator Gooch of the 51st, Cowser to the 46th, Kennedy the 18th, Miller the 49th, Ginn to the 47th, and others, to be entitled an act to enact the Achieving Connectivity Everywhere Act, to amend Titles 32, 36, 48, and 50 of the official code of Georgia annotated.
Chair recognizes Chairman Powell to explain his motion.
The Senate has insisted on its position and moved to appoint a committee on conference, and likewise we need to do the same. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
On the gentleman's motion that the House adhere to its position on Senate Bill 402 and that a committee of conference be appointed. Is there objection? Is there objection? The chair hears none, and the House has adhered. The chair appoints as a committee of conference Chairman Powell of the 171st, Chairman England of the 116th, and Chairman Watson of the 172nd. Okay. Before we come back next Tuesday, we've got some birthdays. Please help me wish an early happy birthday to Representative Brian Prince. Representative Prince. He's having his birthday on Saturday. Also on Saturday, Chairman Jimmy Pruitt. Happy birthday. On Sunday, Representative Sherry Gilligan. Okay, for your planning purposes, listen up. Senate Bill 332 will be postponed to the next legislative day. Senate Bill 263 will be postponed to the next legislative day. Senate Bill 191 will be postponed to the next legislative day. House Resolution 1107 will be postponed to the next legislative day. House Resolution 1036 will be postponed to the next legislative day. Mr. Leader, you have a motion for us?
No, sir. I thought we were working.
Chair recognizes the majority leader for a motion.
I found one, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move that this House stand adjourned until 10 a.m. Tuesday, March 27th, 2018.
The majority leader has moved that this House adjourn until Tuesday, March 27 at 10 a.m. All those in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. This House will be adjourned until Tuesday, March 27 at 10 a.m.